Alright, let's talk about God of War Ragnarok. This game has got some of the best moments I have ever experienced in gaming. The characters, the combat, the voice acting, it's all top notch. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's perfect. There's things in the game that really frustrated me, and we're going to get into it. First off, I gotta start with Thor. Hands down my favorite character in the game. This dude is an absolute force of nature. He's dealing with family drama and his own insecurities while trying to live up to the impossible standards set by Odin. It's really fascinating. And Ryan Hurst, he absolutely killed it as Thor. Every line he delivers feels raw and powerful, but there's also this vulnerability underneath it all. I would love to see a standalone, story-driven game about Thor, something that dives into his backstory. It could even be a DLC, and I'm just saying that swinging that hammer around would be a lot of fun. Let's talk about the rest of the characters. Kratos, he's so much more than the angry godslayer he used to be. The game dives deep into who he is now. He's a father, a mentor, a guy trying to leave behind a legacy that just isn't blood and chaos. Every time he hesitates, every time he chooses restraint over rage, you just feel the weight of his history. He's wrestling with his regrets and fears in a way that feel raw and human, which is something that we didn't really get a whole lot in the original trilogy. And Atreus, the kid's growing up. He's not just following Kratos anymore, he's pushing back, making his own choices, and carving out his own identity. And yeah, sometimes I wanted to yell at him for being reckless, but that's just what makes him feel real. Even when I didn't agree with his decisions, I still cared about him, and that's a testament to how well written he is. You can see how he's caught between his destiny and his need to live up to his dad's expectations. Now, Freya's arc is great too. She goes from someone consumed by vengeance to rediscovering her purpose and her strength. I unfortunately don't think I can get too much more into it without spoilers, so we'll just leave it at that. And even the side characters steal the show. Brock and Sindri, I didn't expect their arcs coming at all. They could have just been comic relief, similar to how they were in the first game, but instead, they get these emotional, standout moments that hit way harder than I expected. Sindri especially, his story took a turn I was not ready for, and it really stuck with me. These two aren't just sidekicks, they're a crucial part of this world, and they add so much more depth to it. A huge part of why these characters hit so hard is the voice acting. Christopher Judge's Kratos, his delivery adds so much to the character, but everyone else brings it too. Even the small characters have incredible performances. It's easily some of the best voice acting in gaming. Let's talk about the side missions, or as I like to call them, main quests in disguise. These things are so good that they don't even feel optional. You're out here helping spirits find peace, uncovering lore, and tackling challenges that are just as rewarding as the main story. Like, the giant jellyfish quest or the one with Freya's backstory, these aren't throwaway quests, they're full-on narratives that expand the world and characters, and the rewards are sometimes even better than what you get in the main game. Seriously, if you're skipping these, you're missing out on a lot of content, and some of the best storytelling happens in these side missions. Now let's get to my favorite part of the game, which is the combat. The combat in this game is so good. The Leviathan Axe, the Blades of Chaos, and the new spear weapon that you get all feel amazing. Every hit, every combo has weight behind it. The boss fights are where the game really shines. They're intense, cinematic, and so satisfying to beat. This is the kind of combat that just makes you feel like a god. What makes the combat so good is how it keeps you on your toes. You're not just mashing buttons, you're constantly switching weapons, managing cooldowns, and figuring out the best way to take down a group of enemies. The Leviathan Axe is all about precision. You throw it, you recall it, and you feel like an absolute beast. Perfect for those one-on-one fights. And the Blades of Chaos are perfect for crowd control and getting into the thick of things. And the new weapon, it opens up the gameplay in ways I didn't expect, and I think it's one of the coolest additions to the series, hands down. And then there are the boss fights. The boss fights, every single one of them is memorable. Whether it's because of the sheer scale of the fight, the mechanics, or the emotional weight behind it, these aren't just fights, they're moments that stick with you. The camera zooms in, the music builds up, and you feel like you're in the middle of something legendary. It's kind of the combat that makes you want to pump your fist in the air when you finally take a boss down, especially if you're playing on those higher difficulties. But it's not just the big fights that stand out. Even the smaller encounters feel meaningful. mainly towards the end of the game, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about whenever you get there. The variety of enemies keep you engaged, and you're always adapting to new attack patterns and weaknesses, and the game doesn't let you get too comfortable. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws something new at you. Whether it's an enemy type or a surprise mini-boss, the combat is just the perfect mix of strategy and chaos, with just enough challenge to keep you coming back for more. Every encounter feels earned, every victory feels like an accomplishment, and I never got tired of it. Honestly, the combat alone was worth the price for me. The exploration and the graphics in Ragnarok are stunning. The 9 realms are packed with detail, secrets, and lore. It's a world that you want to get lost in. But man, the compass is straight up useless. It's supposed to guide you, but half the time it's sending you in circles or pointing you to the wrong spot entirely. And what's even worse is when you're trying to follow the compass and it leads you to an area you can't even access yet because you don't have the right ability or item. So you're left wandering around, wondering if you're doing something wrong, when in reality, the game just hasn't told you you're wasting your time. Take Ghost of Tsushima for example, which goes even further by blending navigation into the world itself with the guiding wind mechanic. It's intuitive, immersive, and it respects the player's time. That's what Ragnarok needed, a system that works with you and not against you. And the map, you can forget about it. You would think that they would have this figured out after the first game. And let's talk about the camera while we're here. It's too close, way too close. In combat, it's a problem because enemies will attack you from off screen and you have to rely on this little red arrow indicator to know what's coming. It works for the cinematic moments, sure, but in actual gameplay, it's awkward. I constantly wished I could pull it back a little bit. I can tolerate it when I'm in a one-on-one encounter, but when there's multiple enemies, it can be a huge pain. But man, I need to talk about the fast travel system because it's rough. I'm sorry, but the whole process of finding a mystic gateway, navigating to where you want to go, and walking around in a hidden loading screen just feels very dated to me. Even when you unlock more gateways, they're almost never where you actually need them to be, and you end up doing a lot of backtracking just to get to the nearest one, and it completely disrupts the flow of exploration. Now compare that to something like Marvel's Spider-Man 2. The game nails fast travel. First of all, it's almost instant. Within seconds, you're exactly where you need to be and there's no fluff. But what really sets it apart is how seamless it feels. You can pull up the map, click on any point and you're there. No loading screens, no weird in-between steps. It's as fast and smooth as you could hope for. It's designed to respect your time, and that makes a huge difference in keeping the flow of the game alive. In Ragnarok though, fast travel feels like a chore. It takes too long, it's limited to specific locations, and it's anything but seamless. It's frustrating because the game wants you to explore its beautiful worlds, but the clunky fast travel system makes it way harder than it needs to be. Alright, let's get into the puzzles. Look, I don't know what happened here, but the puzzles are a slog. I'm all for a game throwing in some brain teasers to break up the action, but Ragnarok overdoes it, and not in a good way. First off, they're not even hard, it's the same stuff over and over. Freezing gears, bouncing the axe off glowing crystals, lighting torches with the blades of chaos. By the 5th time you're doing one of these, it's like, come on, can we move on already? And what makes it worse is Atreus. The kid doesn't give you 2 seconds to think before blurting out the solution. Hey, maybe try freezing that thing? Dude, I just saw it, let me figure it out. It's like the game doesn't trust you to use your brain for more than a second. But even without Atreus spoiling everything, the puzzles just feel like padding. They completely kill the pacing. You'll be in the middle of this epic fight or dramatic story moment, and then suddenly, bam, here's a puzzle to slow everything down. It's like hitting a speed bump on a racetrack. Speaking of pacing and slowing things down, let's get into the Atreus sections. I'll be honest, I hated them. Every single one. The pacing grinds to a halt, the gameplay feels watered down, and it's just not fun. Atreus is great as a character, don't get me wrong, but when you're playing as him, it's like the game forgets what makes it good. The combat feels clunky, and the shift in narrative focus just leaves you feeling resentful, and every time I had to switch to him, I felt like the game was just wasting my time. I just wanted to get back to Kratos. You'll be in the middle of this epic, emotional, high-stakes story, and suddenly the game's like, hey, Let's spend a couple of hours with Atreus sneaking around or picking fruit. It completely kills the momentum. Every time I realized I was about to switch to Atreus, I groaned because I knew the pace was about to come to a screeching halt. And playing as Atreus felt like a huge downgrade. He's got his bow, some melee attacks, and magic abilities, but it all feels so limited compared to the brutal, satisfying combat of Kratos. There's no weight to his attacks, no real sense of power. And you go from feeling like a god to feeling like a kid with a toy bow, and it's jarring. The only saving grace for playing as Atreus is his ability that he gets at the end of the game, which I won't spoil, but man, I wish I could use it with Kratos. It's pretty great. Look, I get it. They wanted to flesh out Atreus' story, but there had to be a better way to do it other than this. Every Atreus section felt like a chore, and by the end I dreaded every time the game forced me to play as him. At the end of the day, God of War Ragnarok is a masterpiece. It's just not perfect. The characters, the combat, the side missions, they're some of the best I've ever experienced. But the compass, the puzzles, the camera, fast traveling, and those Atreus sections just hold it back so much. Still, the highs are so high that they make the lows worth it. You have to take the good with the bad. Thor alone makes this game unforgettable, and I would replay the whole thing just for him if it wasn't for all of my gripes with the game. I don't really know how I feel about giving ratings on the channel yet, but if I had to give it a score, it's gotta be a 7.5 out of 10. I took a half a point off for everything that I didn't like about the game. If you take the puzzles, the Atreus sections, the compass, the camera, and the fast traveling system, address all of those issues, people, you got yourself a 10 out of 10 game here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.